Hello, nice to see you on my channel, Hearts and Shadows. Enjoy watching.
My name is Albert, and I will be sharing how I ended up helping my wife get the much-needed break she asked for, even though it cost us our marriage. Some might say I acted too fast. Others might say I did the right thing. Either way, there are lessons to learn from my story. Now let me be clear from the start. Ending a marriage is never something you smile through. It's not a celebration. Nobody wins when two people who once promised to grow old together end up going separate ways. But sometimes, when one person says they need space, or a break, or time to figure things out, you got to ask yourself, why are we even together in the first place? Because if you love someone and they still feel like they need a break from you, then maybe they already checked out a long time ago. I know people throw around the word break like it's just a pause button, but in my experience, it's usually the beginning of the end. I just listened to what she said, and I gave her exactly what she asked for. What came next? Well, that's where things really got interesting. I've been a businessman since the day I walked out of college with my degree. I started an import and export business, which meant I was constantly on the move. One week, I'd be in New York, the next I'm in Dubai or Singapore. It was the kind of life that demanded a lot, not just from me, but from anyone who chose to be close to me. I met Tiffany, my now ex-wife, on one of those trips. We were both stuck at the airport during a delayed flight. She ended up sitting right next to me. At first, we both kept to ourselves, scrolling through our phones and looking bored like everyone else in that terminal. But after a while, one of the flight attendants brought over those dry, tasteless airport meals, and we both made a joke about how the chicken looked like rubber. That opened up the conversation. We started talking. She listened when I spoke and seemed genuinely interested. By the time the plane finally landed, it felt like we'd known each other longer than just a few hours. We exchanged numbers, and to be honest, I didn't expect much to come out of it. I meet a lot of people when I travel, but something about her stuck with me. Even with my packed schedule, I made an effort to keep in touch with her. Whenever I was back in town, I'd hit her up, and we'd meet for coffee. Over time, the connection grew stronger. I made it clear from the beginning what my life was like, always moving, dealing with clients across time zones, handling shipments, and managing customs issues. She knew that being with me wasn't going to be a traditional 9 to 5 relationship. And at that time, she didn't just accept it, she respected it. She admired how driven I was and how consistent I stayed, even when life got messy. In return, I admired her patience. She never made me feel guilty for being busy. I tried to make up for the distance in every way I could. Whether it was thoughtful gifts, surprise visits, or flying her out to meet me when I had time, I made sure she knew I cared. I wasn't perfect, but I never left her guessing about my intentions. I gave what I could, when I could, and she received it with open arms. Or at least, that's what I believed. After several years of dating, I finally got the courage to ask Tiffany to marry me. We had been through so much together already. So I proposed, and she said yes. We got married, and it felt like everything was falling into place. At the time, I had already established my business, and while I wasn't a billionaire or anything, I had built enough momentum that I could live comfortably. More importantly, I could finally start spending more time with Tiffany. I knew that when I was away, it was hard on her, so I made a conscious decision to slow down. I started cutting back on my travel, limiting myself to the essential trips, and staying home more. For the first time in a long time, it felt like I was actually present in my own life, and in hers. We had our fair share of happy moments in those early years. It was almost like the marriage was perfect. Life was good, or at least it seemed that way. But when you're in business, things don't always stay stable for long. The business had its own agenda. Something with business, it has a mind of its own. It doesn't care about anniversaries, birthdays, or any of the personal milestones that might mean the world to you. As much as I tried to control it, the global market started shifting. New challenges arose, things I couldn't ignore. The international landscape was changing, and I needed to adjust to it if I wanted to keep the business running. Suddenly, the regular trips I had planned for a few months a year became frequent long-haul flights, especially to Asia, with China being a major focal point. I sat Tiffany down to explain. I told her, these trips are necessary if I still hope to run this business the way it needs to be. We're at a critical point, and if I don't take these meetings now, we might lose the chance to expand. I'll find a way to make this work, I promise. I reassured her that this wasn't going to be forever, that I would figure out a better balance. I told her I understood how hard it was, and that I wouldn't abandon her. But I also knew the reality of the situation. Walking away from these deals wasn't an option. If I did that, I'd be risking everything I'd worked for up until that point. Tension started building between us. It didn't happen overnight, but gradually, Tiffany started feeling neglected. I could see it in her eyes when I came home after a long trip. She started pointing out the things I wasn't around for. She'd say, "You weren't there for me when I needed you. You're always away, and I'm here alone. It feels like we're just going through the motions." And at first, I'd listen. I tried to empathize with her. I knew she wasn't wrong, but I also had to explain my side of things. "I get it," I'd say. "I understand that it feels like I'm always gone. But if I don't take these trips, we might lose everything we've worked for. This business, it's our future." I reassured her, as best as I could, that I would figure out a way to make up for the time we were losing. But the truth was, the business was demanding more of me than I could give. And I was starting to wonder if it would ever be enough to fix what was happening between us. Things weren't the same anymore, but I kept telling myself it was just a rough patch, a bump in the road. I was preparing for what was supposed to be one of the biggest trips in my business career, a meeting with new partners in China. This deal had the potential to really shift things, not just for me, but for both of us. I needed it to go well. As I packed my bags, I knew I had to speak with Tiffany. I could feel the distance between us growing, and I hated it. She didn't look happy when I walked into the room, but I wasn't going to let that stop me. I walked over to her, trying to find the right words to explain. This trip wasn't just another business venture for me. It was crucial. I took a deep breath and said, "Tiff, this trip to China, it's important. I know we've had our disagreements, but if this deal goes through, it'll benefit both of us forever. I need you to understand this." She didn't say anything, just stood there, arms crossed, staring at me. I could see the frustration in her eyes, but I was hoping she'd see the bigger picture. I was doing this for us. But instead of responding, she just turned and walked out of the room. I stood there for a second, trying to make sense of it. She was upset. I knew that much. I decided to go on the trip anyway. The business in China took a lot longer than I had anticipated. Deals that were supposed to be simple turned into a complex web of negotiations and paperwork. It felt like everything was moving at a snail's pace. I was constantly busy with meetings, checking on details, and trying to keep things moving. I texted her after a few days, hoping to keep some connection despite the distance. "I'll be home in time for our anniversary," I wrote. I wanted her to know that despite everything, I was still holding on to the promise of being there for her, that I was coming home. I wasn't going to miss that. But when I checked my phone, there was no response. Nothing. At first, I tried to brush it off. She's still mad. It wasn't like her to ignore me completely. Still, I held on to hope. After weeks of meetings, long hours, and everything that comes with handling international business, I was finally heading home for our anniversary. I'd promised Tiffany that I'd be there, and no matter how tired I was determined to keep that promise that she was still my priority. So, I messaged her as soon as I landed. Just landed. Heading home now. I honestly expected a reply with some warmth, maybe a "can't wait to see you," or "happy anniversary, babe." But instead, I got a message that completely threw me off guard. Her reply came through in seconds, as if she had been waiting for me to reach out. She said, "I think I need a break from a marriage to figure out what I truly want." I stared at that message for what felt like an eternity. There was no way she was saying what I thought she was saying. I realized that I wasn't going to sit around and try to talk her into staying. I had already been down that road too many times. I just replied with a simple, calm, "Okay." Now I know that probably sounds cold, but at that moment I wasn't interested in arguing. Instead of heading home like I'd originally planned, I immediately canceled my trip. I told the driver to reroute my car to a hotel nearby. I pulled out my phone again and made a call, this time to my lawyer. I told him what had just happened, and I didn't waste time. I told him to prepare divorce papers. Tiffany had already made up her mind, and now it was time for me to make mine. I had abandoned another pending business deal just to show up for our anniversary. I had put everything on hold to try and save our relationship. But she'd made her choice. And I wasn't about to keep fighting for someone who wasn't fighting for me. 2 days later, the papers were ready. My lawyer had them in hand, and he served them to Tiffany as soon as possible. She wasn't expecting this, not like this. Along with the divorce papers came instructions to vacate the house within 2 weeks. It was brutal, I'll admit, but I wasn't in the business of playing games anymore. Tiffany had made it clear that she wanted space, and I was more than happy to give it to her, in the most final way possible. Tiffany was stunned when she received the divorce papers. She probably thought in that moment that there was some misunderstanding, that it couldn't be happening like this. She tried to text me again, of course, asking why I had gone this far. But here's the thing. When she told me she needed a break, I knew exactly what that meant. It wasn't just a temporary pause. It was her way of checking out mentally and emotionally. She needed to figure things out, but in reality, she was already done with the marriage. So, I told her exactly what was on my mind. Since you need a break, I want to give you a permanent break. That's the reality of it, and I wasn't going to sugarcoat it. Naturally, Tiffany asked me to take it back. She begged, almost pleading for me to reconsider, but I couldn't. By this point, I was firm in my decision. Then I reminded her that the business you're throwing tantrums about has been funding your lifestyle. And if I stop doing it, as you've requested, we'll be without money. She had been living comfortably, enjoying all the perks, all the luxuries that came from the success of my business. The business was the backbone of our lifestyle. And once that was gone, so was everything else. As the days went on, I could see Tiffany's desperation building. She was realizing that the house, the cars, and the financial cushion she'd been relying on were slipping away from her. With the divorce papers served, she knew everything was about to change. And the worst part? She couldn't do anything about it. Why didn't she just sue me, you might wonder. Simple. I had been smart about how I structured my wealth. Over the years, I'd made sure that many of my assets weren't directly in my name, all of them carefully protected. My personal business actions were intentionally separated from my ownership of certain properties. This wasn't just some random decision I made on a whim. I did it to protect myself and my interests. If Tiffany had decided to take me to court, she'd quickly realize that everything she thought she was entitled to would end up being out of reach. And even worse for her, any settlement she could have gotten would have been far less than what she was imagining. This was all set up long before the marriage started falling apart, and now it was coming into play. So, Tiffany's best option? To be diplomatic. There was no point in fighting. The legal system wasn't going to give her anything, and the emotional battle was over. The only thing left for her was to accept the situation and find a way to move forward, no matter how difficult it might be. Seeing Tiffany's messages made me, at a point, wonder if I should reconsider. Maybe I was too hasty with my decision to end it all. But then, a saying popped into my head. When a woman wants a break, she already has someone in mind. At first, I dismissed it. I didn't want to believe it. But with a little investigation, I found out that Tiffany had been seeing someone else while I was away on business. I won't get into the details of how I found out, but trust me, I found out. That was the final straw. By the end of the 2 weeks, it was clear. She had to go. She needed to face the consequences of her actions, just like I had to face the reality of what had happened to us. After everything that happened, I don't want to sit here and paint myself as a victim. I think a lot of people would probably look at what happened and think I was the one who got hurt the most, but that's not entirely true. It takes 2 people to make a marriage work, and it takes 2 people to break it apart. Tiffany couldn't handle the demands of my business. She couldn't accept the fact that I had to travel constantly, that I was always away, always working. She wanted me to be there for her, but she didn't understand what it took for me to provide the lifestyle she was accustomed to. That's part of why she gave up, but that wasn't the only reason. The real issue was that she chose to go outside the marriage, to cheat. That's something I couldn't accept. And once she did that, I knew it was over. The break she asked for wasn't about space. It was about wanting to explore her options. And I wasn't one of them anymore. I learned a lot from everything that went down, and I think it's important that I share these lessons with you. First, if someone asks for a break, don't ignore the deeper reason behind it. It's rarely as innocent as it sounds. A break is often a polite excuse to explore options outside the relationship. So, if your partner asks for one, don't just think it's a temporary thing. There's more to it. Another lesson I learned the hard way is that you need to build your life in a way that protects your assets. Everything I worked for, everything I built with my business, needed to be protected. If things go wrong, your emotions shouldn't take away what you've worked so hard for. And I guess one of the toughest lessons I learned was not to chase people who stopped choosing you. Tiffany gave up on us first. She chose to step outside the marriage, to betray everything we'd built. Lastly, and maybe most importantly, is this: balance love with purpose, but never sacrifice your purpose for someone who doesn't respect it. I tried to compromise my business for her, to spend more time with her, to make up for all the time I spent away, but she didn't meet me halfway. She didn't respect my purpose, and in the end, that's why everything fell apart. I needed my business to support us, to give us the life we wanted, but she didn't understand that. And I think, in the end, she just wanted me to choose her over everything else. But when you start asking someone to give up their purpose, their passion, for the sake of the relationship, that's when things get dangerous. That's when people start to feel like they're losing themselves.